You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 15.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
Hi everyone, I am so excited that my last guest for 2018 is someone who's had a tremendous impact on my performance abilities, Dr. Don Greene. Dr. Greene is a peak performance psychologist who's taught his comprehensive approach to peak performance mastery at the best music programs across America, including the Juilliard School, the New World Symphony, and the Parliament Music Program, as well as at the U.S. Olympic Training Center. During his 32-year career, he's coached more than 1,000 performers to win professional auditions and has guided countless solo performers to successful careers. Students of his have won jobs with the Metropolitan Opera, the New York Philharmonic, the Chicago Symphony, the San Francisco Opera, and the National Symphony, to name just a few. And the athletes he's coached have won 14 Olympic medals, including 5 gold. Dr. Greene has authored 8 books, including Audition Success, Fight Your Fear and Win, and my absolute personal favorite book on audition and performance preparation ever, Performance Success. He co-produced a viral TED video titled How to Practice Effectively for Just About Anything, which received 25 million views across Facebook and YouTube. Dr. Greene is the authority on performance success for musicians, and this episode might just change everything about the way you prepare for concerts and auditions. He and I discuss performance preparation, how to mentally center before a performance, and recovery strategies during the performance. This is a value-packed episode from the best of the best, and I'm sure you'll enjoy. Let's go to the show. Dr. Don Greene, it's such an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Renee. I'm glad we could do this.
I had the great privilege of being introduced to you and your work and participate in your workshop back in the days when I was a fellow at New World Symphony, and it completely transformed the way I prepare for concerts and auditions and the way I perform in high-stress situations. And I remember my first professional audition for the San Francisco Symphony, and not advancing, and afterwards thinking, wait a minute, I really need to apply the stuff that I learned from Dr. Greene. So I took out my notes from the workshop and I bought your book, Performance Success, and I tried to do everything in the book, and I was never the same performer after that. So I want to thank you for creating this content and sharing it with us. And Dr. Greene, I know you didn't start in the music world, and I'm sure glad you found your way to us musicians. And I would love for my listeners to hear about your journey in your own words. So can you please tell us how you got to where you are and how your path has unfolded?
Well, sure. I've always loved music ever since I can remember, and really started coming into music just when the Beatles were coming on the scene, and kind of grew up with the Beatles and always loved it and always loved hearing music. I tried to play guitar, never did very well. My path was more athletic. My mother was a competitive athlete, and starting at age 7, I started getting professional gymnastic lessons, trampoline lessons, and then at 9, I switched over to diving. And that's what I did most of my life, early life, is competed in diving in high school and then in college. And I went to West Point. So after graduating, I had 5 years in the Army, and ultimately wound up studying sports psychology, which is what I had always wanted to do before I went to West Point. As a diver, I could be either very good or embarrassingly bad. I could hit a reverse 1.5 with 1.5 twists off the high board, and make it look dazzling. And then the next dive, I could try to do a swan dive or front dive and be flat on my back with face. And I always wondered why I was so erratic. And every coach I asked never had an answer. So I eventually found sports psychology and started getting answers to my questions about my being erratic, which were answers, I think, to a lot of other people's questions about performing under pressure. And after going through a PhD program, I was first with the Olympic diving team, and then the World Championship swimming team, and I got into professional golf and motor racing, and I eventually wound up in Vail at the Vail Ski School, teaching people not to freak out going down hills really fast on slippery surfaces. And in the summertime in Vail, I did golf clinics, and I had just come back from Denver back to Vail. I did a series of golf seminars, and I got a call about somebody inquiring about my next golf clinic, and would it be in Vail? And I said, no, I just did one. He said, well, do you do private sessions? And I said, yes. And he said, well, can you see me individually? I said, sure. Meet you at the golf course. He said, but by the way, how much do you charge per hour? And when I told him, he said, well, I can only see you for 10 minutes. So I said, what do you do? He says, well, I'm a classical musician. I'm a bass player. There was a concert series, Rio Bravo. I don't know. It came through as a concert series with the Rochester Philharmonic that came through on a concert series through Vail, and he was the principal bass with them. And he said also that he was a very good golfer, but that he was struggling like with his putting. So could I talk to him? I said, well, I'll tell you, I'm a frustrated musician. If you trade me some bass lessons, I've never tried to play bass. I'll trade you sports psychology lessons. So we met the next day at a golf course. And he was a very good golfer. If he wasn't practicing his bass, he was playing golf. He was very good. And I went out and played 9 holes with him and watched him. And he was really good. But over putts, he just stood over the putt forever, overthinking. And then he'd hit a bad putt. And when we came in, I said, I've got some assessments. I use assessments with athletes to measure their focus, measure if they are overthinking, their attentional span, a bunch of different things. And I had him take these assessments. I ran him through a computer, and I met with him the next day, and I said, yeah, you're overthinking everything, and it's not going to help. So I taught him basically to change his routine before he putted, so he had less time to think and more shifted to right brain, not thinking in words, but more either imagining a good putt or feeling a good putting stroke and quieting the mind and trusting it. And then we went out and played another 9 holes, and he putted like 5 strokes better, which would mean a drop in 10 strokes over 18 holes. And he said, this is awesome. He said, but everything we did pertains to how I play. As a principal in an orchestra, would you like to work with classical musicians? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. I don't know if I have much to say, but I'd love to. And 6 months later, he arranged for me to go to the Syracuse Symphony, where I did a series of lectures. And the first day, I only got like backstand people and subs. And the second day, I got about the half of the orchestra. And the third day, I got most of the orchestra and the principals. And I could only speak in athletic terms and golf terms, but they seemed to kind of meet me halfway. And one of them wrote an article about me to the Senza Sordino magazine. I guess it's an Ixom publication. And a teacher at Juilliard contacted me and said that she was working with 4 students, horn students, who were preparing for a Met audition for one section position that was 2 months away. And would I work with them, 4 ladies, to prepare them. I said yes, and I went to New York and I met with all four of them, and I gave them these assessments that I asked them to try to convert to musical terms, not sports, and they did. I met with them and kind of mapped out a strategy over 2 months, and then I went back to California and I met with each of them on the phone individually to go over their assessments and strengths and weaknesses and map out individually what they needed to do. And 59 people played that audition at the Met, and those four ladies came in fifth, fourth, second, and first.
Wow.
Yeah. The woman who came in first went to the president of Juilliard and told him it was my fault. And the woman who came in second was a junior at Juilliard. She played so well they offered her a subcontract for $100,000. And she went to the president and told him. So I met with President Polisi, and he asked me if I could teach this, in a classroom. And I said yes. And I went back to him the next day with the Juilliard schedule, the semester schedule, with 14 classes, and how I would teach this, from beginning with an assessment to teaching them how to focus, to shift from left brain to right brain, to quiet their minds, and basically how to prepare for an audition and play a good audition. And that's how it started. One of the horn players at the New World Symphony had heard about some of my success and had the dean, Pat Knott, had Pat Knott, the dean, she contacted me, asked me if I could come down and give a presentation, which was to all the fellows. It basically said it would be my audition. If the fellows liked what I had to say, then I'd be on the faculty, and if not, thanks for the presentation. So I went down to New World and gave an hour presentation and said, I'm a sports psychologist. I don't know that much about classical music. I just know about competition and how to play under pressure. And I gave a presentation, and all the fellows were unanimous. They wanted me back, and that's when I started with New World. And the rest is more of a continuation, let's say.
That's a great journey. And I love how it really illustrates perfectly, how everything is connected, really. Your background in athletics and the Army is really conducive to coach musicians, because you have the discipline and facing adversity and the minutia of all the maneuvers. And, this is a perfect segue, because I would love to talk about your work right now. And you've mentioned some aspects of it already. Athletes have had sports psychology for decades, and we're just starting to catch up with the game, us musicians. And the way I see it, your work is about learning the art of doing well under pressure. It's really an art to handle stress and handle competition in a healthy way. And you address some of the biggest hurdles musicians have to face in the context of concert or audition preparation. What do you think are the key elements in the preparation leading to an audition or a concert the musician should really pay more attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is where I see musicians capitalizing on all their preparation and training, or sabotaging it in the last week or two before important events. And it sort of goes against their training as a classical musician, because they are very, very dedicated and have great practice habits, better than athletes, better than Olympic athletes. And they can overdo it. So what Olympic athletes have learned to follow is a 4-part training cycle to enable them to peak their energy at the right time, namely at the Olympic Games or the World Championships. And they are trained to do this. And for a lot of musicians, this is new information, but hopefully they'll find very helpful. The 4-part training cycle, the first part is preparation. And this is the vast majority of the time that musicians need to spend their time and do. But this is only one part of the cycle. Preparation. This is playing, repetition, arpeggios, scales, playing through pieces over and over, stopping, starting, playing with a tuner, playing with a metronome, taking lessons, playing for your teacher. This is preparation. And this is practicing practice, which needs to be done for months, years, weeks before an important event or audition, but not the week before. The week before, maybe a week before, people need to shift over to tapering. This is backing off the intense training, the pounding away at the excerpts, especially for brass players. It's just, you need to play them over and over and over until they blow out their chops or wear out their fingers on the strings. And what Olympic athletes have learned to do is not to maintain a high plateau of intensity of marathon runners running marathon every day, or long distance swimmers swimming 20,000 meters a day, but backing off the last week or two to let their body recover from that intense training and get the lactic acid out of the system so they can go in with fresh muscles, with a fresh body, rather than one that's depleted of energy and worn out. So it took a while for these athletes to get accustomed to not training at those levels because their confidence was tied to them, that they had to put in those yards or meters every day to feel confident. So the first time through, the first group of athletes through were very skeptical until they saw what happened. And what happened was the world records dropped dramatically. Quantum drops in times, in distances that could be measured, namely the marathon times or long distance swimming times. And it made believers out of the athletes, and they have been believers for about 20 years now. But this is what classical musicians balk at, because they're so used to practicing for many, many hours a day, that if I tell them, and I demand my clients the last week or so, back off. Give your body time to rest. Do things you're not ordinarily used to doing. Take a long walk. Go see a movie you've been meaning to see, hopefully an inspirational one or a comedy movie. Do spot playing. Do a couple mock auditions. But then the rest, take a nap. Let your body get ready. This is called tapering. This is where classical musicians have trouble because they feel guilty, especially the week before a big event, of not going 8 or 10 hours a day at it. But it works. It's proven over and over again to be the most effective way. The third part of this training cycle is you execute. You go in there with lots of energy, fresh and rested, and you kick ass. That's it. Dominate with that energy. Whereas everybody else is going in there tired, wiped out, overplayed, mentally and physically drained. They're not going to play their best. It takes energy to play a great event, a big, important concert or audition. It takes a lot of energy. So the last 2 days, especially, you want to get more rest and sleep. The most important night of sleep before a big event is 2 nights before, not the night before. 2 nights before, because there's a delay in sleep. So 2 nights before, you want to go to either bed early or sleep in. The night before, you don't want to go to bed early. You want to go to bed about the normal time, and you just want to wind down to sleep. Don't do anything exciting. No action movies. Just maybe a boring history book. Military history always worked for me. It can put me to sleep in about a minute. But if you don't fall asleep right away, the idea is to not expose your eyes to light, which will just wake you up, but to just lay there. Get your body really comfortable. I suggest, if you know how to center a long form of the centering, go through your body from head to toe, making sure each muscle group is very relaxed, a lot of deep breathing. And if you don't fall asleep right away, don't worry, hopefully, because you got a good night's sleep the night before, and you get 70% of the value of rest, even if you're not asleep. You don't have to be unconscious to get value of rest.
Mm-hmm.
So what I suggest is just lay there and take a time of your 1 year of your life, a happy time, and go through it like a summer vacation in detail. This is not the time to think any musical thoughts whatsoever. And so you don't get to think about music camp or a music festival you went to. A non-musically related, if there's such a thing, family vacation, and go through it in detail, namely where you started out, where you stopped to eat, what you had to eat, where you slept, and probably in about 20 minutes you'll be sound asleep. I recommend getting up early, unless it's an afternoon event or audition. If it's before 1 o'clock, get up much earlier than you normally do to get your body up, take a walk, play some, warm up slowly, and get to the audition site early and go there ready with lots of good energy to use the adrenaline you're going to be feeling rather than fighting it, and ride that wave and kick gas. That's it. Afterwards, part 4 that most musicians ignore is recovery. The day after, or 2 days after, or more, after you put yourself through the previous preparation, tapering, and execution, burning a lot of energy, mentally and physically, you should take a day or more off, leave the instrument in the case, don't step up to the piano, sing, and recover from it. Go get a massage, take some days off, just be good to yourself, and get ready to start playing, regardless how you play the audition or concert, ready to start back to improving again. That's it. That's the 4-part cycle. And most musicians ignore step 2 and step 4.
Yes, and I think that you're completely right. I think for some of us, it stops at the preparation. You just jump from the practice room to the stage and hope for the best.
And then back to the practice room.
Exactly. And I love this advice that you gave about focusing on these joyful, happy moments right before, because I so agree with you that really putting yourself in this mindset really will enhance the performance. I strongly believe of the effect on this focus on joyful, happy moment affecting the stress level and the attitude that we'll have while we perform.
Well, exactly. Here's the thing. Leading up to an important event or audition is very stressful. And it takes people out of their normal routine. They don't follow their routine. They don't get enough rest and sleep. And they get very preoccupied with results. They tend to get negative in their thinking, like what would be the worst thing that could happen. And it affects them emotionally. And since I spent a lot of my time on the phone and Skype with people, musicians, in the last week before their audition, I've spent the last 25 years of my life holding hands of people going through this process. I love to do it, but people get very emotionally sensitive. They get what I call prickly. And all of a sudden, their spouses are walking on eggshells because they're so sensitive. And it's coming out of fear, and it's not healthy. And it's over seriousness. It's focused too much on results, which gets in the way of process. And people waste a lot of emotional energy on their own emotional sensitivity the last week before an important event. And they lose their sense of humor and take things too seriously. So it's a combination of being physically supple and keeping your body relaxed the last week, because the body is going to be under a lot of tension. So maybe 5 days before an audition, a hot tub or a nice massage to get some of the lactic acid out of the body that was produced by the stress of the preparation. Long walks to get some of that out. Listening on headphones to good music, to what you want to hear, what you want to sound like. mentally to be in a positive mindset of mentally rehearsing it, seeing yourself playing it well, hearing it well, feeling yourself with the fingerings, with your bowing. That's the mental component of keep the right mindset that it's going to go well and nothing to the contrary. And emotionally keeping yourself in a good frame of mood in as positive a mood state as you can. This is an opportunity. This is not the gallows. They're not going to execute you. No matter how badly you play, you're going to come out hopefully without bleeding, without scars on you. Some of my clients, like race car drivers, it's really serious and they cannot come back. One of them came back with a broken arm one time. He had a choice at the St. Peter's Grand Prix in his Porsche to drive. His brakes went out on this turn, and he had a choice between driving into the crowd or driving into a brick wall. So he drove into the brick wall and he broke his arm. They set his arm, and it was fortunately his left arm, so he could drive the next day. And we said, okay, he can still drive. And he won the series the next day. So, but he came back, and I've never had a musician not come back. So this is very serious, but it's not life and death. Mm-hmm. Or another way to put it is it's too important to take too seriously.
This is great. I'm going to have that quote framed, I think, in my office. One of the elements of your work that I use the most is centering, of course. And I've been what I could call a centerer for about 15 years now.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's a huge component of my preparation. And I know you offer centering training through your website. I strongly recommend taking this course to anyone listening. But Dr. Greene, can you tell us in a nutshell, what is centering and how it can help us? Sure.
And I'm glad it's working for you. I still use centering. It just came back from the Cleveland Institute of Music, where I gave a bunch of presentations over 2 days. And I centered before every presentation I did. I still do. After 40 years, when I learned it, of being convinced, because I learned it from my mentor who invented centering, I was convinced I could find a better way, and I'm still looking. I converted it from sports to music. It took me 2 years to do that, but that's what I've done. But basically, centering is a strategy, a focusing strategy to help elite performers, whether they're athletes or musicians, to control their energy under extreme pressure and to shift from left brain to right brain under pressure. He was a competitive diver as well, and he was always wondering why he didn't do well under pressure.
This is Nadifa you're referring to.
Dr. Robert Nideffer, an incredible sports psychologist who went to Japan and studied the martial art of Aikido, the most mental of all the martial arts, the martial art that teaches us how to focus, how to quiet our mind, to be in the present, how to do things like slow time down, amazing things. He got his black belt in Aikido and then came back to the US and got his PhD in sports psychology and combined the two of them, which resulted in this strategy called centering. It's a 7-step process. It's very sophisticated. All the steps are different. It takes a little while to learn. And it takes about a minute and a half, minute and 45 as you first start doing it. And after you practice for a week or so, then you move to intermediate centering, which goes to 5 steps. And then another several days of practice, and you move to advanced centering, which can be done in 3 steps in 10 seconds or less, and help you shift in right before you go on stage, or even between excerpts at an audition, between excerpts from the normal left brain of worrying about the previous excerpt or criticizing it, or worrying about the high notes at the end of the next excerpt, taking yourself out of the moment and in the same time, you can quickly shift, get back out of left brain, back into right brain, back into the moment, hear the phrase the way you intend it to sound, and then play it in right brain without overthinking that gets in the way of playing. And that's what centering does. And I've used it with world-class Olympic athletes, race car drivers, before they got in the car or at pit stops before they went back out on the track. Instead of analyzing their turns or break points or shifting points, they closed their eyes and centered, got their focus back, got back into a quiet right brain state where they could react in the moment effectively, and then went back out on the track. So in graduate school, I used centering with police SWAT officers, and I taught some SWAT officers how to center, and the others I didn't. And the officers that learned how to center and centered before they went into a move and shoot course where they had targets popping up in pairs. One part of the pair was a guy with a machine gun pointing out, and the other was a woman holding a baby. The whole idea was to shoot the bad guy, not the woman. But under stress, some of these trained officers shot a bunch of women. And unfortunately, those things continue to happen. But my dissertation proved that centering was effective in teaching trained SWAT officers how to perform significantly better under pressure than untrained SWAT officers that were untrained in centering. So this is what I teach, and I haven't found a better way. I've just made it more accessible by doing this centering course, which is a workbook, videos, and audios teaching centering, and not just centering down, but centering up. Because once you get used to controlling the energy and controlling performance anxiety and become a fan of adrenaline, you'll want to learn how to center up. So if you're not feeling up for a performance or audition, you can get up quickly. And that's centering.
It's such a great way to bring us to the present moment, which is what we so often lose in the stress of the performance.
Exactly. And then we're thinking either in the past or the future, or what's my teacher going to say?
Another thing I love and apply from your work is the recovery strategy when we make a mistake. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. I'd love to. I'm not a fan of perfectionism. It just doesn't work in elite sports nor in classical music. The idea, like my website says, our motto is striving for excellence. That's the concept. Striving for excellence, not perfectionism. That will drive you nuts, and it doesn't work. So I'm an extreme optimist, but mistakes happen in classical music. It's too challenging a skill, and there's too many moving parts and things like humidity and temperature that can throw a stringed instrument off, not to mention the stand partner, distractions, people in the front row with candy wrappers, and angry conductors can all cause mistakes. Not to mention going to concerts without enough sleep, which leads to mistakes. Again, if you don't go in there tapered, you're setting yourself up for a mistake. Anyway, mistakes are inevitable. So rather than hoping that they don't happen or try to preclude them at all costs, if we can just accept that occasionally they happen, so it's not whether they happen, it's what you do immediately after they happen. And whether it's an isolated event in time that happened, like happens to everybody, and just move on, get back on the next note, or that causes the following note to be affected with analysis, criticism, blaming, not being in the moment, setting up another mistake. And if that happens, then you can analyze two mistakes and worry about it, and it sets up a train wreck. So the idea is to have a strategy in place that you rehearse when you're at home practicing performing when mistakes happen. And that is a 5-point strategy. And here we go. Step number one. The goal of this is not to preclude mistakes, but to have it be just one note, not the crescendo after that. So first step is most classical musicians have to make a mistake, go into a state of denial. It sounds like, I can't believe I missed that note. I never missed that note. I haven't missed that note since high school. Well, you're just delaying it. It's inevitable, and you're just delaying it. You're already not in the moment. So the idea is to immediately accept it. You don't have to be happy about it. You just have to accept it. You missed the damn note.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Number two, when most classical musicians make a mistake, they cringe. Their muscles tighten because they went, ooh, jeez. And they tighten up. And if they take that tightness into the following notes, they're setting up more mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is to identify where you as a musician tighten up when you do make a mistake. For most of them, it would be shoulders, pianists in their hands, violinists in their arms, shoulders, jaws, etc. Just to identify individually where you tighten up when you do make a mistake. Because you have, and you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm very positive. I'm an optimist. It happens. Number three, bring your mind back into the present because it was in the past. Maybe jump to the future without worrying. Bring it back into the present. The beauty of music is it's moving. The note is moving. Mm-hmm. Problem with golf is the ball just continues to sit there. And you can think about it all day long. And the longer you think, the worse it's going to get. But with music, it's moving. Get back on the note. That's it. No muss, no father. Worry about correcting the mistake later. In fact, most musicians, they made mistakes probably in summer festivals 10 years ago, they still remember. You won't forget. Mm-hmm. After. In the meantime, get back on the note, the current note, in the now. Get in the now. Number four, if you need an emergency process cue, emergency word or phrase, I would prefer simple musical process cues, basic things that your music teacher would remind you if you're in the middle of a train wreck. Like smooth bowing, good fingering. Mm-hmm. We don't want amazing information. This is not the time to process new concepts. Go back to old boring concepts like good bowing.
Or breathe.
Or breathe. Yeah, there's another good one. That's a great one. Breathe. Or the emergency cue, it could be, wake up!
Yes. And are these process cues that you think one should establish before the performance?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is what you need to learn and practice this strategy way before in the privacy of your practice room and then in front of your teacher. Mm-hmm. And the fifth is not try to make up a mistake in the rest of the piece by playing the remainder of the piece better than you ever have your whole life. Mm-hmm. To show them that this was a mistake that never happens. This is the wrong time to bring out the fireworks or new fingering. Let's play good and get the train back on the track. No heroics. Let's just get back to solid play.
I like that. No heroics. It's true because I think that's what we tend to want to do is launch into these. I love the term heroic playing, which does not help ultimately.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dr. Greene, I was seeing that you are embarking on the great new project with Winning on Stage. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I'd love to do it. This is a project that recently came out that was supposed to come out 2 years ago. So I've been working on it for 3 years, and it's strictly for performing artists who simply want to understand how to either accelerate the learning process or how to perform their best under pressure. Besides the centering, we have other courses coming a performance mastery course and eventually an audition prep course and a foundations course for accelerating the learnings. So we're having these. In addition to that, I've got a number of new assessments. I started out at Juilliard converting the sports assessments of how athletes need to learn or can learn faster or how to perform better under pressure. And it took me 2 years at Juilliard going to voice lessons, piano lessons, oboe lessons, all kinds of lessons, and working with teachers to really understand musicians versus athletes. And then with the help of a composer, conductor, opera coach, pianist, converted the athletes' assessments into musicians' assessments that pertain to how musicians learn and how they perform under pressure and at auditions. And over the years and work with New World Symphony, I've upgraded these several times. So I have a number of different versions. Some of them are tied to my books, Performance Success and Fight Your Fear and Win, which have assessments in, but these give the same assessments online and computer grade the scores and give out printouts and explanations of what the scores mean. But some of the assessments are tied to workbooks, like Sharpening Your Performance Skills is tied to a workbook that covers, based upon the assessment and identifying strengths and weaknesses, different chapters that pertain to the weaknesses identified by the assessments. Like playing for a music teacher, that you play and then they tell you strengths and weaknesses. This is my way of testing musicians to see mentally or in learning what they're strong at. They don't need to do that. They don't need to strengthen their strengths. They need to identify what their areas of improvement are specifically, especially in relationship to other musicians, where they can make the most improvement and go to those chapters in one of these workbooks and learn on their own skills like controlling energy, improving confidence, building courage, recovering from mistakes, like I just covered, that's one of the chapters, memorizing music, dealing with adversity, building mental toughness. Other assessments are tied to this performance mastery course, that's performance mastery assessment. But all these assessments are on the website. And the last one is I have the performance mastery assessment and a half-hour consultation with me. So folks can take this assessment, get their profile online. I'll see the profile and do a consultation with the folks like I used to do at New World Symphony. This is basically what I did at New World Symphony, is give the fellows the assessment, and then one by one, have a half-hour session with them, cover their assessments, their strengths and weaknesses on their profile, answer their questions, and then map out a course of improvement for them over the next several months. And this is what I'm offering now on the website on Winning on Stage, is the performance assessment and the half-hour consultation with me. That's what I've been working on for 3 years, and now it's up and running.
And that is so crucial because, you can address what you assess, It's when you know yourself that you can figure out where you need to grow.
Some of these things are hard to figure out. Mm-hmm. It just took me about 20 years and a PhD and years studying with my mentors to understand how to really ask these questions with a meaningful result. In other words, if I sit down with a musician, I say, what's the problem? They say, well, I'm having trouble concentrating. And I say, well, why? They say, I don't know. That's what you're supposed to tell me. And I say, well, I don't know why you can't. That's why you take the assessment, because these assessments break down concentration into 6 different quantities, just 6 different variables, like attention span, like whether they're able to keep in the present, the types of distraction, whether they're externally or internally distracted, can they get mentally quiet, or are they more left brain dominant, overthinking? Then it's like looking at an x-ray. When I see their their scores on these 6 different but related categories, I can say, okay, the reason why you're having trouble focusing is not because of external distractions, it's more internal, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like people having a broken bone and having it set without taking an x-ray. It doesn't make sense to me. That's what these assessments do, and that's why I have built my career on these, and different ones with different people. I have different ones for musicians, different than executives, different ones for athletes, so we can get right to the heart of the matter in their specialty and say, this is the reason you're having problems, and this is how you solve them. Mm-hmm. It gets right to the heart of it, rather than spend 3 months trying to figure out why they can't concentrate.
Dr. Greene, that's fantastic. And I wish we could keep going all day, but I know you have to be on your way. So would you please give us a quick actionable tip that you think listeners could start to implement today in their musical lives?
Yes, sure. For most of these folks, they've spent the vast majority of their lives and careers working on improving their physical and technical skills, which is what you need to do. But for most of them, and this is what I talked about the Cleveland Institute of Music, is now they're ready for the third step in their development, which is developing their mental skills, namely how they perform well under pressure. Because you don't get paid very well for practicing well or doing it well in relaxed settings. It doesn't bring in a lot of money. It's for performing under pressure. And for most of them, this is their next step in their development, in their progression to a professional career, or a better orchestra, or a principal position, is working on their mental skills, their mental game. And this is what the website's all about, is teaching musicians how to strive for excellence in their mental games, in their performing.
Dr. Greene, I always tell everyone, and especially my students, that if they are serious about a career in music, they must own a copy of Performance Success. And I hope that if you're a musician listening to this episode today, you either already have a copy or get one ASAP. I also have 2 other books that you wrote, and I love them, Fight Your Fear and Win and Audition Success, and they're great resources. And there's, as you mentioned, really incredible content on your website, winningonstage.com. There's also a really great TED Talk where you discuss learning. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes for all of this. And
great.
I strongly recommend everyone to really check it out. So,
yeah, it's how to practice effectively, and it applies definitely to classical musicians in their lives. And I think they'll find it very helpful.
Dr. Greene, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this gift of your time and your knowledge today. And you and your work have had such a big impact on my own musical journey and how I teach my students now. And I'm so grateful to have been lucky enough to cross paths with you at such an early stage of my career. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Renee. Really enjoyed it. All the best.
Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Greene, please screenshot this episode on your phone today, tag me on Instagram at mindoverfinger, and let me know a couple of things you really loved about this episode, because I want to dive in this topic even deeper with you guys and keep this conversation going. This is our last show for 2018, but I'm beyond excited about the guests that we have lined up for you for the new year, starting with a great conversation with solo violinist Chloe Trevor, which will be released on January 18th, 2019. Tune in to hear us talk about all things mindful practice and performance. In the coming months, you'll also hear from Nick Platoff of the San Francisco Symphony, Anthony Miguel from the New York Phil, Amy Beth Horman from the Beyond the Triangle podcast, and many more mindful musicians. As always, you can find the show notes for this episode at mindoverfinger.com. And if you're looking for a community of mindful practice enthusiasts, join the Mind Over Finger tribe at facebook.com/groups/mindoverfingertribe. There you'll find inspiration, motivation and support, as well as information and discussions on how to take your practice and performance to the next level and enjoy the process. If you have the chance, please take a minute to head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I send you all my best wishes for the new year. Again, thank you, and à bientôt!